Durant pull-up jumper off the rim and in. Oh! And the Thunder win! All right, come on, let's sing the Thunder song.
Wait.
When you hear the sound of thunder, don't you get too scared. Just grab your thunder buddy and say these magic words.
Hello and welcome back to a special edition of the Thunder Buddies podcast. We got a special guest on the line. He's out in sunny California, but he covers the Cleveland Cavaliers. Dave McMenamin, for ESPN, he covers the Cavaliers. Used to cover the Lakers. Sorry to take you away from the soap opera going down, but how you doing right now, Dave?
I'm doing well, and it's nice to step away from the constant churn of is David Blatt's job safe, and is Kevin Love a max player, and is LeBron James still the player he once was, and just talk to you guys.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm at least the initial line of questioning is probably not the one you've been getting on other radio shows and TV stations, but we actually brought you on to talk, at least initially, about Dion Waiters, a guy that you formerly knew. I don't know, it seems like you might have kind of an interesting connection because you're from Philadelphia, right? And he is.
Yep.
He went to Syracuse, and you went to Syracuse, right?
Yeah, certainly the Syracuse connection has, established our relationship. I knew him before I started covering him with the Cavs this season, and didn't know him back in the Philly days. He's a bit younger than I am, but certainly through Syracuse, I've gotten to know the interesting guy that is Dion Waiters.
Yeah, did you cover him at Syracuse or just watch him, or?
I just watched him. I was a manager on the basketball team when I was there, so I've stayed in pretty close touch with the program, and the guys have come through ever since I finished there up in 2005. So, I basically kept tabs on Dion since he was in school. Manager
on the basketball team. How's that? Do you know Jim Boeheim well?
I do. Yep. Jim Boeheim. Basically, the beauty of the Syracuse program is it's been Coach Boeheim there for 35 years, so there's been a lot of continuity on the coaching staff. Jerry McNamara was a player when I was on the team, when I was a manager on the team, and he's now a coach on the team. So it's kind of been seamless in keeping in touch with the program and what's going on up in Central New York.
Waiters there, I remember he had like a good finish to his sophomore year, but his freshman year was a little rocky. I know he kind of, clashed a little bit with Jim Boeheim. Now I think he looks back on it, at least from what I've read, and says it was a good time. But, what do you remember from him when he was at Syracuse?
It was tough. Dion's a really headstrong player. You're talking about a kid who, at the age of 14, Syracuse offered a scholarship to. It was something they never did before in Boeheim's past. That wasn't his recruiting style, but they had such a belief in his ability that they, kind of broke from protocol and offered that scholarship to Dion, and certainly he has the talent to back it up. I think because, though, he has that kind of headstrong mentality, my take on Dion, he just still has a lot to prove, and he wants the platform to be able to do it. And, to him, that platform, I don't think yet in his career is necessarily, being comfortable being a off-the-bench player and contributing to wins. I think he wants to be, a primary reason for his team's winning. I think that you look back at his time at Syracuse, that was pretty much the fundamental struggle that occurred, to the point where Boeheim wasn't so sure that he wanted to have Dion be a part of the program after his freshman season, and I heard whispers about maybe Dion being encouraged to transfer and find another school to go to. He's just a headstrong guy that I think as he matures, certainly talent's there, and I think the right people get through to him, he can be a really productive player in the NBA.
Was that, would you say, also his main issue in Cleveland? Was just the coming off the bench, not having the primary scoring role, especially this season after they add LeBron and Kevin Love?
Yeah, well, I think this season, to Dion's credit, I feel like his last maybe 15 games in Cleveland. You know, he was there, about 35 games or so. So the first 20 games, I think it was really up and down with accepting that role. But at least outwardly, he was saying all the right things for the last 15 games and actually being pretty productive. And the team was asking him to make an impact on the defensive end. And I think he was number 2 in the league in steals per game at the time of the trade, coming off the bench. And, that was a way he was finding a niche, putting pressure on perimeter defense, and the Cavs are so good in transition offense that he was making them look good out there. I think in years past, before I got to Cleveland, he was on a team that was winning 28 games or something like that his rookie year, 33 games last year, and he saw Kyrie Irving be anointed as the franchise savior, and kind of given all the kind of leash, the long leash that the number one guy on a franchise is given. And Deion was saying, I think my take on it, saying to himself, well, I'm as good as Kyrie Irving. Why is the franchise being handed over to him to lead us to a 33-win season? I could easily get us at least 33 wins if I was given the same amount of shot opportunities, the amount of minutes, the amount of attention paid to my offensive skills and catering our offense around that. So I think that's kind of where, the dissension built between him and Kyrie in years past. And this year, I think he wanted to be a good soldier. He came in the right intentions, but David Blatt during the preseason was encouraging Dion Waiters. He led the team in shot attempts per game, and that's a 7-game preseason, and that's a pretty big sample size. And if you're going to encourage that behavior, all of a sudden 3 games into the regular season, bench a guy for doing the same thing. I think there's a lot of responsibility that falls on David Blatt's shoulders for the way he kind of sold Dion a false bill of goods about what his role was going to be this season.
Yeah, I mean, were you surprised by the trade, or was it something that it was just eventually going to happen and it just happened to be that day?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised by the trade, just because David Griffin made it clear since training camp, basically, that even before Anderson Varejao went down, they were looking for some big man help, and they're also looking for depth. And you look at the pieces on the roster that were tradable assets. Dion, you just knew he was in some way an overlap because they already had so much scoring out of their big 3. And he's a young guy with a very amenable contract that you'd be able to move. And so, I did not think he was going to be on the team past the February trading deadline. The fact that the trade happened when it did, I was a little surprised it happened that quickly, with still about 5 weeks to go until the trade deadline at the time. But no, I'm not surprised that Dion isn't ending the season with the Cavs.
Dave, what can you tell us about the attitude issues, the perceived attitude issues that Dion might bring? And do you think that could be a problem with the Thunder? I mean, here's a team that has a similar 2-man star system as Kyrie Irving and LeBron James and Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant. They've got that sort of third guy representing Kevin Love and Serge Ibaka. And they've also got Reggie Jackson, who I don't think the Cavs had. I mean, that was Dion Waiters. He was the Reggie Jackson on that team. So, how does he fit into this team? And do you envision those perceived attitude issues or locker room issues creeping up into the Oklahoma City locker room now that Dion's added to this team?
Well, I've been just from afar impressed by, Kevin Durant's initial tact in dealing with Dion Waiters. I think his original comment was, he was underutilized or something to that extent in Oklahoma City, underappreciated, and we certainly appreciate him. And then I know he had a tough debut with the Thunder, but I think his second game he had a big 3-pointer late in the game, and I think I saw Kevin Durant told one of you guys his post-game comments that, he missed another one before that, but we're still going to go to him. We know his abilities, and, if he's open, he's going to get a chance to shoot. So I think that's the type of, the way you got to nurture Dion. He's still a young kid. He has the utmost confidence. He thrives on confidence. But I think he's also, despite his kind of brash exterior, he's pretty much, he's kind of like a playful, sensitive guy. And I think, knowing that he has that kind of acceptance from the, quote-unquote superstars or whatever on the team, I think can help him go a long way. I think he wants to have ownership in what's going on and not feel like he's being told, you got to do this, you got to do that. He's a player that, freelances a lot, and he needs to at some point realize that his freelancing, his step-back jumpers, his cross-court passes that get picked off and turn into the transition bucket in, that's counterproductive. But I don't think the way you're going to get through to him is to give him set rules and be like, abide by this or you're going to sit. I think, being more nurturing, the approach that Kevin Durant seems to be taking so far, to me, is going to be a way that you can, I think, unleash the most of his abilities.
Traditionally, the Thunder have had a defensive-minded shooting guard like Thabo Sefolosha. Now it's Andre Robertson, and they've liked an offensive playmaker off the bench. That's kind of been an issue with Reggie Jackson, especially this year. He's talked about wanting to start. He's talked about wanting to have his own team. If Dion Waiters, let's say Reggie leaves next year, like we kind of are all starting to think he will, and Dion Waiters is anointed as the sixth man, getting the type of minutes like the 30 per game, the stuff Reggie Jackson was getting early in the season. Is he okay with that, having a primary role, playing a sixth man, getting 25 to 30 minutes, but not starting, or like Reggie Jackson, is starting like a must in his mind eventually?
I would say that he envisions himself as a starter. Now, he's never, even though he was on one of those two teams at Syracuse, he was pretty darn good. But in the NBA, he never really had the chance to be in this amazing winning culture. Yet to be seen what's going to happen in this second coming of LeBron with the Cavs and whether they'll be able to establish it. But it wasn't quite there yet, obviously, by the time he was traded. So I think if he sees that I'm getting a consistent role, I'm being valued in this role, and we are winning consistently, I think that can change any player's mindset. The question is, and I think Reggie's kind of there now too, you want to make the money in this league, and the people who get paid money in this league are the starters and the players who play more minutes, who give it a chance to put up bigger numbers. And if Reggie leaves for a bigger payday, it wouldn't totally surprise me if Dion was looking for the same sort of thing when his rookie contract's up.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because they're the season Reggie's at right now, which is his contract year with restricted free agency coming, that's exactly what Waiters will hit this offseason heading into next year. So that'll be interesting to see how the Thunder handle that. But you seem, especially, you mentioned defensively, and I've actually kind of seen this. He had 4 steals the other night. He seemed to get a bad rap defensively. I think it seems like he falls asleep off the ball more than you like. But you seem to be higher on him as a player, specifically defensively, than maybe some who criticize his low percentage shots and then his off-ball defense. Where are you on him as a player?
Well, I'm just defending him when I saw defensively because he competed and he knew the kind of the spot he was in, and he was told, if you won't go out there and give a defensive effort, we're not going to play you. And then you saw him really making some plays on the perimeter. And that's what you want. You want playmakers out in the court, and that's what he's capable of doing. Not just intercepting passes, but straight up stripping guys because he has the strength and the quickness to do that. And then the other aspect of the game, they were telling him, like, you're shooting too much and you're taking bad shots. And when he got into rhythm, no one's going to stop him from shooting. That's just who he is. But he purposely was approaching games where he would come in the first quarter and he would try to feel it out more and try to drive and dish versus drive and finish. And it was a very tactical approach to things and trying to appease the coaching staff while, actually maybe having what they wanted to occur seep in at the same time. So I just think, he's kind of in the, everyone on Twitter loved laughing at the idea that he was traded for J.R. Smith, and he's put in that same kind of category as a Nick Young or, one of these kind of, he's almost like there for our entertainment as a character versus being a person and being a basketball player. I think there's potential there for him being, a 360-degree, well-rounded contributor on a, what could be a championship team.
Yeah, that's funny you say that. I guess I didn't get that to the extent until I put out there that he, hey, he's going to wear number 23. And then just everyone was flooding with, emojis and laughing at him about that, trying to say he thought he was Jordan. And then again, the next day when I had the quote from him about why he had to wear 23 with the whole James Harden thing, that blew up too. So it became pretty obvious early on that, yeah, like you said, he's kind of a character that people, like a J.R. Smith type, that the basketball world seems to enjoy making fun of it at some points. But enough about Dion Waiters, at least for now. You are covering, like we mentioned earlier, one of the more interesting teams in the league. What's the Cavs record right now? I think they're right around 500, right?
19-20. Yeah, 19-20.
Okay, this to me is super interesting because you're covering the Eastern Conference. A lot of people would have labeled before the season, I think I did, the Eastern Conference favorite. They're 19-20. We're covering what some people would have labeled the Western Conference favorite. They're 18-19. Where are you? I mean, are you still optimistic about this team? I mean, I know it's every other day there's, a story about David Blatt's job security, this and that, like you were mentioning earlier. But where are you on your optimism level of this team being able to turn it around?
I am optimistic just by the fact that they are in the Eastern Conference and there's a lot of time left before the postseason. So I think it wouldn't shock me at all if they win. Let's say they go 30-13 over their final 43. That wouldn't be a huge surprise to me. And now I'm coming from the background having covered the Lakers in that disastrous 2012-2013 season when they started off 17-25 and ended the season 28-12. And that team to me was way more caustic and toxic than this Cavs team is. That Lakers team had two superstars who fundamentally did not get along with one another in Kobe and Dwight Howard. It had a coach who was minimalizing Pau Gasol's role on the team just to appease management because they wanted to make sure Dwight Howard was getting touches so Dwight Howard would stay, which eventually obviously didn't occur. They had, an aging Steve Nash who just wasn't the player that they thought he was as a contributor. The Cavs, if LeBron is going to look like the player he was last night after taking 2 weeks off for rehab and looking like the four-time MVP again, if they can get that LeBron the rest of the season, combine that with Kyrie Irving, I think has been a great player this year and really, I think, the most consistent player in terms of effort on the Cavs this year. You throw in Kevin Love, but they still got to figure out the best way to use him, but certainly he has enough talent offensively. I think that's ultimately, if this team's going to succeed and make a run, it's going to have to be basically relying on their pace and their offense to outscore teams. They have that there, and they also have an inclusive superstar like LeBron versus Kobe, who is not. That's not his MO. He's more of a lone wolf type of guy. I think they can get this going and be one of the better teams for the second half of the season. Now, whether that means they're a championship team, no, but I think they'd be one to start with. And whether that means that David Blatt is going to be safe just because they have a good second half of the season, I'm not so sure about that either. But at least I think you're going to see better basketball out of them as the season goes on.
How many years did you cover the Lakers?
I was in LA 6 seasons and 5 as a beat writer.
Okay. Can you compare and contrast? I mean, you kind of did a little bit there, especially probably the most dramatic Lakers season over your time, I'd assume, was that 2012 season. But what has been the difference covering a big market team towards a small market team that also, obviously gets a ton of attention still? What's kind of been the differences?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Lakers, media attention-wise, it's similar, but you just have a bigger media market at home in LA, so it kind of never stops. Also, for LA being not that great of a sports town, the Lakers are the gold standard, and that's what sports fans in LA care about year-round. Cleveland, I would classify as a better sports town than LA, but people are more concerned with the Browns year-round than they are about the Cavs. I mean, the Browns were playing like an early season game that didn't matter that much in my opinion because you're not talking about the playoffs yet. whereas the Cavs were, I think, having the Spurs come to town, the defending champions, and most of the news coverage was focused on the Browns and not the Cavs. And to me, I was like, what? This is still, this is the very early stages of the Cavs' Big Three this year, and you have the defending champion Spurs come to town, the team that beat LeBron in Miami last year to kind of set everything in motion to get them to come back to Cleveland. And people are more concerned about, Joe Hayden and Brian Hoyer and that crew. So that's been a difference. I think the Lakers franchise is so used to being the story and being, a championship contender and just from a PR standpoint, I don't think they sweat the small stuff. They almost with the Hollywood glitz and glamour, they just welcome the attention no matter which way it comes. And I in my time dealing with Lakers PR, I didn't have too many times where I felt like it was being so controlling with the media. But the Cavs, I think it's a much more small market mentality, trying to be a lot more controlling with the message, trying to limit access with the players and coaches. And, that's been a challenge, certainly, being a reporter day to day and trying to come up with unique stuff when they're trying to kind of herd the media and just give us all the same group availability. That's kind of been the one thing I've had to navigate constantly day in, day out this season so far.
Yeah, we feel you on that one.
Hey, Dave. Yeah. My question, Dave, is which conference is the better conference to cover? It's something that I've always been intrigued by. Is it better to cover the East or is it better to cover the West? Just from strictly a city, not the teams. I'm talking about our personal preferences.
I know where you're coming from. Well, I mean, living, kind of in the Midwest, but on the Eastern time zone or whatever, it's easier travel. I feel like I don't feel like I'm getting jet lagged as much. I guess it's rarer for me to have the 3-hour time difference. I don't even know if that's true. I just remember Phil Jackson earlier when I was covering him saying that no team from the West Coast would ever beat the Bulls 72-10 record because the travel's so harder coming from there than being in the Midwest and having easier flights overall. So I think there's some truth to that. I think that the travel, hasn't been as wearing on me this year. I'm from the East Coast. I'm from outside Philadelphia, so I'm all for, and I lived in New York before I lived in L.A., so I'm all for more trips to L.A. I'm all for more trips to Chicago, all for more trips to Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. That's where my family, my high school friends, my college friends are. So from a personal standpoint, I like that. But, I was starting to get used to 2 trips up to Portland, every year, the Nike store up there. This is my first time being back in LA since I moved to Cleveland in September, and they decided to put the Lakers and the Clippers on the same trip, and that's it. You only, Eastern Coast, Eastern Conference teams only play Western Conference teams on the road once a year. This is my only trip I'll get to LA during the season. Stuff like that. Even just like, we were in Phoenix the other day, like, oh, this is my only time in Phoenix this year. Other times I'd be there 2 or 3 times a year during the preseason and regular season and maybe even the playoffs as well. So I think overall, just because it's still so new to me going back to the Eastern Conference, that I'd choose Western Conference because I'm still used to that kind of pace. But I could see myself getting used to having all these trips to New York every year too.
Yeah. What's the climate, the Cleveland fan base? Because they just had the Browns, I don't want to say meltdown late in the year, but obviously Johnny Football kind of, wasn't what they were hoping, at least late in the year. And then right now, obviously, what's going on with the Cavs. Are they down on this Cavs team? Are they optimistic? I mean, where's their head at, would you say?
I think their patience is wearing thin. They gave them a long leash. Even when there were struggles early, I think the Cavs started off 1-3 this year, and that was really falling flat in your face with all the hype coming into it. But that kind of went without too much wary from the local fan base. They were just still so euphoric about the idea of having LeBron back and having that kind of feeling that they should be winners. And, then the Browns thing happened. And now, while this other kind of mini slumps occurred, them losing 7 out of 8 when LeBron was out, well, that was directly coinciding with Ohio State's run by beating Alabama and beating Oregon. And so that was another great distraction, and Cleveland's, nuts for the Buckeyes. So I think now that the Browns are officially done and Ohio State's done, and now I think this is where, and the winter's starting to get colder and people are getting a little angrier and ornery about it. Now I think this is where the expectations will spike, and if they don't start performing at like they should be, you're going to hear more boos. You're going to hear more angry calls to the radio shows. You're going to, see people really, not accepting what's being offered to them by the Cavs.
What are they going to say? LeBron go back to Miami? I mean, how'd that work out for him? They should be happy that he came back. Like, anything is good at this point.
You know how fans are, though.
Yeah, but, 50 years. Darnell, it's been 50 years since they won a championship.
I'm a Cleveland Indians fan. I can feel that.
Yeah. So, that's at some point, your predisposition to start to think things are just not going to go your way. And so if they start thinking based on all the things that have gone wrong, then this whole LeBron return already becomes sullied. And they thought it was like, okay, we're finally not that moribund franchise. We're finally that city that we get to pull the rabbit out of the hat and have this improbable thing occur where we thought we'd lose this guy forever, and we're going to get the tail end of his prime. And who would bet that LeBron James wouldn't win a championship from year 12 through the time he retired? Like, I would bet really good money that there's no way he would not get that third ring. But the way things have started so far, I think there's some kind of doubt creeping in that, maybe that's not a guaranteed ring, and maybe our long suffering is just going to continue.
Hey, Dave, I want to ask you a couple Thunder questions because of all the media that covers the Thunder, I think, you're right up there with some of the guys who follow this team closely, really understand a lot about this team, and is really high on this team, I would say, from everything from Kevin Durant. I'm not sure where you stand on Russell Westbrook, but, we had a text message conversation the other day about Scotty Brooks. And you feel like he's doing a pretty good job, and, he's unfairly criticized. But just my first question to you about the Thunder is, I asked Brian Windhorst the same thing because he's obviously so close to LeBron. Is just now that you're so you're following LeBron so closely, and you're a fan of Kevin Durant from the outside. Just where do you see Kevin in terms of coming for LeBron's crown as the best player in the league?
Well, I don't want to be too much of a prisoner of the moment for what I've seen out of Kevin this year, because obviously he's coming off the foot injury and he's been pretty sporadic in his play. I think we both agree to that. But the player I saw him building to the last several seasons was someone who he had such confidence on the floor from 40 feet out. He's a threat just to score, to make a play. You had literally had to guard him out, let's be maybe a little more realistic, 35 feet, 30 feet. And that creates so much space on the floor. And then you have someone like Russell Westbrook, if, they're playing in tandem with one another, and Kevin's already drawn a defender all the way out on the wing there, and then there's another guy in the lane shading towards his side of the court because they know that he's not just a threat to pull up, but put on the floor. Well, then if they move the ball side to side, then Russell Westbrook's going to have a one-on-one with, probably a rim protector that has his head on the swivel still looking at Kevin Durant on the opposite wing. And that was the beauty to me of what Kevin Durant was becoming. Was his offensive game was so complete that there were parts of his game that I don't think are ever going to match up to LeBron's. He's never going to be the passer that LeBron is and have that court sense. He's never going to have the physicality to be able to match up all five position-wise. Now, he obviously has the length in his own ways maybe a little bit more quickness than LeBron to make up for it defensively, and he's gotten better defensively. We all agree with that. But I just thought that he had mastered the game offensively so well that would be his way, that he, in some levels, would be a better player than LeBron for whatever this amount of time would last, as LeBron starts to slip and Kevin really establishes his prime. But I think, I don't know, you guys see him way more often than I do. I still try to watch, at least one Thunder game a week. I don't think this year he's quite back to that yet. I mean, what do you guys see?
I think he had that 2-game stretch where he had 44, I think it was on Phoenix, and then 34 on the Wizards. And really, I mean, you can go back to the game he actually sprained his ankle, and then he was out again when he had 30.5 on the Warriors. He looked as good as I'd really had ever seen him in that little 3-game stretch. But I mean, you're right. Lately, I mean, when they went on that West Coast trip, he was pretty bad. Again, back in Golden State, not good in Sacramento. It's off and on, and I mean, he's playing choppy, but the thing is, I mean, his season's been so choppy with all these injuries, so it's kind of understandable. I think if he stays healthy down the stretch, it will be interesting to see where he's at compared to where LeBron's at coming down the stretch too, and then maybe kind of relook at things as far as best player in the world type combo. Like with everything, honestly, it's just what goes down in the playoffs.
I think I'm also still scarred by the fact that the Cavs, when they were in Oklahoma City this year and LeBron wasn't playing, they felt comfortable having Matthew Dellavedova guard Kevin Durant for some key possessions in the second half of that game, and Durant didn't make him pay for it. Like I didn't.
We've seen it before.
I didn't get it.
Yeah, Chris Paul in the Clippers series last year guarded him a little bit down the stretch, and that became a big thing. Like, why isn't Durant taking advantage of that? He has that's probably, I mean, the post game. That's an area that LeBron's become so good at, and we haven't seen really from Durant. Maybe it's because of the power, but you'd think with that length, I don't know.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm cheating a little bit here. I just checked his stats as we're talking, and I'm saying this supposed slippage, but I should be checking myself and watching him more often. He's shooting a career high 52% from the field, a career high 43% from the three. I mean, the guy is, I guess at some point we're trying to nitpick. We
are, but you are right. I mean, the thing with last year was it was so consistent every game. He was so good. This year he's had monster nights, but then he's kind of disappeared. He's had this weird substitutional pattern. They're trying to cut down his minutes. He has not been as consistently near as dominant as he was. I mean, when he was an MVP. Right. I think that's moving forward, especially for the Thunder. They actually haven't played a game in about 5 days now. Coming out of this break is what the Thunder are kind of going to need from Kevin Durant the rest of the season, is to get back to that level.
Yeah.
Dave,
go for it.
No, I got another question about you. The Thunder, just in general. You mentioned Cleveland at 19-20. Part of your optimism for that team is they're in the East. Well, the Thunder is 18-19, also a game under 500, but they're in the West. What would make you optimistic that this team can not only make the playoffs, but make a deep run in the playoffs?
Well, what would make me optimistic is, one, the stat that you guys, I probably saw it from you guys first, but something like the Thunder have won 72% of their games in the careers of Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant when they're healthy and on the court together. So they still have that personnel. I know, that both those guys still view themselves as a team that should have won a championship against the Heat a couple of years ago, and should have probably won the next couple seasons if it wasn't for some bad breaks. So as long as they continue to view themselves as a championship team and they have the talent that they do, that's why I think they'll get there. But again, they're going to expend so much energy just getting to the playoffs, which I think they'll make the playoffs, that it's tough to be able to then go through 4 rounds to win a championship. I think that's the reason why I would doubt them. Now, preseason, this is before there was Russell Westbrook's injury, before Kevin Durant's injury. I picked the Bulls and Thunder in the finals, and I think I picked the Bulls winning, but I just had the belief that the Thunder would be able to get back to that level. now I'm not so sure. I mean, the Western Conference playoffs is such a bear that I don't know. I mean, I think they'd be asking a lot for them to win at such a clip over the next 3 months or whatever to make the playoffs, because they're not going to be able to do what other teams are doing, where they can rest guys periodically. It's almost going to be a night-to-night thing where they got to win to get in, and just that will probably catch up to them.
Yeah.
So long story short, you're not optimistic about them making a deep playoff run.
Yeah, not so much. I think they're going to make the playoffs, but
I mean, I'd agree with them. I mean, because, first round, maybe Warriors on the road.
Yeah, I jumped off the bandwagon this week, Dave. It's all right. Welcome to the club.
Okay, all right.
Warriors without home court, I'm guessing, somebody like the Warriors maybe in the first round, maybe Memphis. Just without home court in this conference, man. Well, Dave, who's the most impressive team you've seen this season so far? From my standpoint, I'd say the Warriors. I've seen now 3 Warriors games.
Yeah, the Warriors. We were just in San Francisco at the start of this road trip.
Oakland.
And, yeah. Well, I was in San Francisco.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
The Cavs actually played them pretty close for 3 quarters, but the Warriors just keep coming at you, and Draymond Green doing everything on the court, and Steph Curry's playing such an unbelievable level right now. I mean, I think he's the MVP the first half of the season. Thompson and Bogut was playing and getting back healthy, and I mean, they're just really, really tough. And the other teams, at the top of the West, Memphis, I think offensively, they got a former Thunder player in Jeff Green. I mean, that's going to help them, I guess, compared to Tayshaun Prince. But I think offensively, that's still a fundamental problem that they have.
Yeah.
And so they don't scare me as much in terms of making a deep run. I don't see the balance quite as much there. I actually think Houston, Corey Brewer had a really good game against the Cavs when they came to Cleveland about a week ago. And, as they integrate him and if they can get something out of Josh Smith and, between, Harden also having a great season and at some point maybe you think Dwight puts it together for another playoff run. I catch them saying Houston may be the other team in the West. Clippers have been way inconsistent. But Spurs are, I just don't know if it's going to come together for them this year between the injuries. It just doesn't seem to be like, this reminds me of like the year after Miami won it all and they got swept out of the first round with the Bulls the next year, just because that year just didn't go right for them. And I'm not so sure, obviously I have faith in what they do, no disrespect to their program or anything like that, but I'm just not sure it's going to come together.
Yeah, I'm just a little hesitant to say that about the Spurs now because, I mean, I have in the past. I've always kind of, this is the year they fall off. This is the year they fall off. And it never really is. So we'll see. I would of that group, I don't think Houston. I kind of would put Houston in a pretender category as far as championship. What do you think, Darnell? Houston? You're more down on Houston than anyone.
I was, but like I said in the last podcast, the Josh Smith move, I think that's going to help them. It helps their depth. It helps their versatility. I think they're a more dangerous playoff team today than they were before they got Josh Smith. So I don't think that they're a real contender at this point, but I wouldn't call them a pretender.
What do you guys think about Dallas?
Dallas, I mean, I thought they've been playing well since they got Rondo, which I was hesitant because I just think they're, free-flowing offense. Anyone can handle it, anyone can pass it. I thought that was going to kind of bog down with Rondo, who's so ball control. But, he's starting to, reestablish himself as a good defensive player. I'm starting to I'd say this. I believe more in them than I do in Houston.
And I guess the other team we didn't really even mention at all is Portland.
Portland,
but I think Portland, I don't know, outside of LaMarcus and Damian, like, if the rest of their roster is championship caliber.
Yeah,
players.
their bench is very questionable. It has been. That's been the issue. I think last year all their starters were averaging like over 30-plus minutes. We talked a little bit about the Clippers.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The Clippers have just been like wildly inconsistent. And,
yeah.
and like if Doc Rivers is all that, like what. He hasn't been able to address the small forward position, and the Spencer Hawes acquisition seems to not be the right one at all. And when he basically could have had Paul Pierce there, and he would have had the small forward he needed, and would have had a veteran presence. And I don't know. There's just something not clicking. This is, and also you think about it, this is a team that I think won 17 straight last year, and then that kind of disappeared as well by a playoff team, and they were really a Jekyll and Hyde team again. Maybe that means that they could just find their stride at the right time and get it back, or maybe they're just a team that's doomed to be inconsistent.
All right, I'm putting all three of us on the spot right now. Who's winning the West if you had to pick today? Who's going first?
I'll go third since I'm the guest.
All right, Darnell, go.
I would probably say Memphis.
I'm gonna say Golden State.
I'm going to go Dallas.
Dallas.
Just based on experience.
And coaching.
They
got the best coach out of the group we mentioned.
That's interesting.
Yep.
We all three did different teams, and neither of us did the Thunder or Spurs, which were clearly the favorites coming into the season. How about
the East?
I was going to say, let's go.
Dave, you go first with the East. You've seen them more than us.
Well, I kind of want to, before we pick the East, I kind of want to talk about the East a little bit.
Why do you always want to talk about the East? The East stinks.
I don't think they're as bad as people think.
They got 5 teams over 500, and one is Milwaukee. It's only a game above 500.
Well, Cleveland's not even considering that; they're under 500. But I think we all agree
Speaks volumes.
I think we all agree Cleveland could be a contender.
What's your point?
All right, fine. We don't have to talk too much about the East. I just have one question. Atlanta, does anyone? They're 23-2, I believe, in their last 25 games.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
It is
and
unbelievable.
In that,
the Thabo Sefolosha effect.
They went to Portland and beat Portland's home winning streak there. They went to Detroit. Detroit, I think, won 7 in a row. Beat them in that streak. They are just, they lost early in the season to the Cavs by about 30, but then they paid them back about a month later and beat them by 30. They just come at you in waves. But again, I don't know. I think in this league you need a superstar. Teams bog down to you on offense. They scout you over a 7-game series. They know what you're doing. They can come in prepared, and you need somebody with the ability to get to the foul line or be able to create his own shot. And who's that guy for Atlanta?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I mean, Al Horford had a triple-double last night, but I don't know that. Like you said, you kind of need maybe a perimeter-oriented star in the playoffs. Jeff Teague, probably I'd say probably an all-star this year, but I don't know that he's superstar status. I don't know that I believe in them. I don't know that I believe in Toronto. Who would you guys have coming out of the East today?
Chicago.
Darnell, I assume, agrees with you. He's big-time Bulls supporter in this podcast.
Yeah, Rose hasn't looked like himself, though. I mean, it's been almost a half a season, and we're still waiting on it. And
Jimmy Butler looks like him on offense.
Jimmy Butler's balling.
Yeah, he's great. And, Derek had that string of, again, you kind of mentioned those games by Durant he had where he looked really, the same guy he was. Rose had like 3 or 4 games kind of the same way, and it was all fourth-quarter performances for him. When it was like, okay, this is, not only is he playing like the guy who was an MVP, but he was doing it in winning time. So, he's obviously got to be right, 40 games from now. But between the way Powell's playing, Jimmy's playing amazing. You have the reigning defensive player of the year, Noah. You have a coach that is going to get them to play hard every night. And I think that city is kind of, they're ready to celebrate like they did in '98. I think that's going to be a really tough out for any Eastern Conference team in the playoffs.
How about that? Powell, 46 and 18 the other night. Can you, from a guy that covered him the last few years when he was just seemed like falling apart, can you believe like the resurgence he's had?
I never thought he'd score 46 this year. But
yeah.
I wrote it at the time he left. Powell's maybe more than any other player I've covered that he needs his heart and his head into what he's doing to really give you what he's capable of. And he has enough pride in his personal performance that he never tanked it with the Lakers. But he would do enough. And, you know, not that he's a selfish player, but he was aware of his stats. And he, you know, when the Lakers were going 27-55 last year and they didn't have any business, you know, most nights they didn't have a chance to win the games they were playing. Well, Powell was aware of that, and he was aware that, you know, he was going to become a free agent, and he made sure he got his 20 and 10. Now, I don't say that in a nefarious way, like he's not about the right things, but I think, you know, when those right things are provided, it's a lot easier to get stuff out of him. And, you know, his relationship with Phil Jackson, for instance, was so strong that you saw a great player, and he bought into the system, and he believed what was going on. Well, ever since Phil left, there was no system in L.A. to lean on. And I think at the time, you know, look at the teams that Powell was heavily considering. You had the Thunder and the Bulls, really, I think, were the top two contenders.
Spurs were in there as well. There's some talk about the Spurs.
And those were three programs that, you know, that Powell could believe in immediately. And that's why I believe, you know, that he would be an effective player, certainly. I didn't think he was going to fall off, and he's, I think, exceeded everyone's expectations.
Yeah, I think I'm going Bulls, too, in the East, so I think it would be a sweep, which I had Cavs Thunder before the season, and I'm not saying that's impossible, but I have switched up on that. So, last thing, Dave, Sam Amick and you, a lot of people say they look similar. I was in Golden State the other day, and I was walking with Sam Amick, and somebody was like, hey, Sam, or I don't even think they said Sam. I think they said, hey, man, thanks for coming on the radio the other day. And he's like, wait, what? And like, yeah, Dave, thanks for coming on. And does that happen to you a lot? Obviously, if anyone doesn't know, Sam Amick's an NBA reporter for USA Today. Do you get mistaken for him sometimes in arenas?
Yeah, I've had scouts come up to me in like the press room dining, and I've never talked to them before, and they just jump into the conversation. Like, I'm like, really? The funniest one was when Sam was still beat writer for the Kings, or either beat writer for the Kings at that point, or covering, you know, kind of the Kings for Fan House for AOL. We were both in the locker room, and Francisco Garcia was on the team, and he like literally was freaking out. He had a double take. He grabbed Sam by the shoulder, grabbed me by the shoulder, and walked us around the locker room to show other guys on the Kings, saying how uncanny it was. I think there's certainly a resemblance there. I don't think it's as strong as some people think it ought to be.
Yeah, I know how that goes. But
yeah, Slater looks like Jonas Valanciunas. What do you say, Dave?
I don't agree with that.
What? Wow, okay, this is what I have to look for.
Pull up a picture, or the next time you're in Toronto, since you're in the East now, you get to go to that beautiful city twice a year probably. Look at Jonas Valanciunas, and then next time you're in OKC, look at Anthony Slater. Dead ringer.
I know you were just in Phoenix last night. Does Darnell Mayberry not have a little bit of PJ Tucker in him? A little bit of PJ
No
Tucker.
chance.
PJ Tucker.
Not at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've seen Darnell on the court, and so I think there's probably some garbage to both of their games. That's one way we can describe it.
All right, actually, last thing now I think about it, because he mentioned Toronto. Top 3 NBA cities to visit that you have never covered. Like, you can't do LA, you can't do Cleveland.
Okay. That was a really good one. I really like Boston. I think it's great food, and I just like, you know, you come creature your habit. I stay at the same Marriott, like the Long Wharf Marriott. I can walk to the Garden, walk back, go to shoot around, go walk back through Faneuil Hall, get like clam chowder. Like the Boston's, I've always looked forward to that trip. I'm gonna go Portland as well. I do the Nike store. There's a bunch of restaurants called McMenamin's there, which is fun for me. And if I had to go a third, why not Miami? I always look forward to going down to Miami. I stay at that 15 Bay Marriott. It has the balconies that open up, get the fresh bay air coming in through the window. That'd be my 3.
Okay, Dave, most underrated.
like going that no one really looks forward to?
I say Charlotte. I kind of enjoy Charlotte.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can go with
Yeah, no.
Mine is Minnesota.
You know what? I can get down with Minnesota. Yeah. It's cold, obviously, but there's some good restaurants there. It's a good pork chop place there.
They got that skywalk system that's
Yeah, you never have to step outside if you stay at the right place.
Yeah. Yeah, Minnesota works. And, yeah, it's easy to get from the hotel to the arena. And, yeah, I like that one.
I got to hit up that Nike store in Portland. Man, I wear Nike clothes. I've never been there, though. Is it the prices are cheap, or is it just everything there?
It's you got to get a Nike employee to get you a visitor's pass.
Okay.
You know, they get only so many to give out per year. And then you get they have all the new clothes. It's like a factory store, but it's all the new products at basically 50% off.
Jeez.
Talk to the equipment manager with the Thunder. Usually they'll make a list for team employees. And
it's off limits.
Yeah, right. Well, we should end this podcast, and then I should continue this conversation.
Yeah.
Because I need to figure out how to get in there. But anyways, Dave, we really appreciate you coming on, talking Dion Waiters, talking the rest of the league. And we'll see you down the road. I believe it's Thunder Cavs. When are they playing again? I think next road trip for the Thunder after this Houston one, right?
Yep.
So
end of a 5-game trip. That could either be a really good game or a really, really bad game.
I think it'll be interesting. I was going to say, I think both teams need to win. So
yeah, in the next 8 games for the Cavs, 4 of the 8 are against Portland Thunder, the Bulls, and the Clippers. So now at 19-20, it could snowball even worse. So they got to get their act together, or maybe that will be an easy one for the Thunder at that point.
Well, I'd say it's the same on this side. The Thunder better get their act together, or it could be easy for the Cavs, especially coming on the back end of a road trip. So it'll be interesting to follow. I'm sure we'll talk to you again down the road. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, Dave.
All right. You got it, guys.
Durant, pull-up jumper, off the rim, and and the Thunder win! All right, come on, let's sing the Thunder song. When you hear the sound of thunder, don't you get too scared. Just grab your Thunder buddy and say these magic words.